right now we actually have two guests. And first is Loughnane, who's the founder and CEO of a company called AI Makerspace. And then we have Chris Alexiuk, and listen to it, he's co-founder, CTO, and head of LLMs at the same company, AI Makerspace. And I think it's about education, right? So first of all, maybe you could give some kind of thoughts around why you think education is important now and why
Yeah.
did you go in this?
Yeah. Thanks, Aurimas. I think the number one thing we're hearing from people is it's not really clear what I should be paying attention to. Today, everything's changing so quickly. The landscape is shifting in front of me. What should I learn? What tools should I pick up? I'm trying to keep up with the space of MLOps, of data science, of AI, and there's not a real good solution. There's not a place you can go to do that. Um, AI Makerspace is a place where we're really trying to make sure that we're providing that opportunity for people to come to build stuff together, to actually deploy stuff to production together, and to share it with others in the community. So through our content, through our courses that are bootcamp style, and through our community on Discord, we're sort of building this place that people can come to make stuff, this space where makers can gather to build, ship, and share really awesome LLM applications together.
Specifically LLM applications, right?
Specifically LLM applications, yeah.
Okay, so how do you think so how are you unique to others? Like, okay, so I am hearing bootcamp, right? So
Uh-huh.
that means that it's kind of extremely hands-on, right? So you get together in a single space and build stuff, right?
Yep, yep.
Other like I think there are quite some of these kinds of
There are.
educational
There
offerings.
are,
So
yeah.
how are you unique? How are you?
Yeah, well, one of the ways that we're super unique is we just don't let just anybody into our boot camps. Like, you got to really prove yourself out, and it's a high friction application process. So you have to like convince us that you're ready to rock and roll, that you're going to contribute. Because a big problem with a lot of the boot camps out there today is you've got very advanced users, super beginner users, and they're all smashed together in the same place, so everybody has a bad time. If you put a freshman and a PhD in the same class, they're not going to get the same thing out of it, and they're going to ask very different questions and annoy one another throughout. So we really try to align levels and bring people to the same place. That's number one. And then I would say the other way that we're very, very different is we are always, every session, you're going to learn the fundamental core concepts from first principles, and you're going to do some live coding with fellow practitioners. So we always are doing concepts plus code every time we meet live in every session. And we do this better than anyone else out there. It is not actually true that Zoom rooms cannot be awesome and fun. We have figured it out. We've cracked the code. Most of them are still terrible, but not ours.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So Chris, your CTO. So what are the main technical challenges I guess? Because okay, first of all, what's the scale of his operation? Like how many people are participating? How do you split them into these cohorts? And what are the main technical challenges?
Yeah, I mean, right now the main focus is on how do we scale up the community and provide a graceful on ramp for our users to our community and out an off ramp out of our courses. And I think the tools that you need to use in order to be able to do that gracefully and in a way that can support 30 people coming out of a cohort at a time and integrate them into a community is it's definitely a challenge, but what we're mostly focused on is making sure that it's a pleasant experience, that they have people in the community they can rely on and talk to, and ensure that they feel like they're welcomed into a place with open arms. In terms of the cohorts themselves, it's just a lot about making sure that your content is able to be parsed through in a fairly self-guided way at times, so that if you have people who are participating in a way that they're not able to engage as much, but they're still deriving as much value from your program as possible.
Okay, and when it comes to LLMs are called large language models, not without a reason, right? Are there any challenges? Like, imagine 30 people logging in and maybe we want to deploy something on their own. Because I guess you're also teaching around how to work with open source, not only like proprietary, etc. Any challenges there, like provide that for mass people, mass of people?
So I would normally say yes, but I mean, with the tools that we have access to today, with the compute resources we have access to today, there's enough availability, there's enough tooling that people of all levels can really come in and get something deployed from, Hugging Face or AWS, wherever you want to come from. I think that's what enables us to be able to do this, is the fact that we are in this period of abundant resources in terms of GPUs, in terms of availability for GPUs, and quantization methods, which allow us to really run some of these insane models on like really consumer grade hardware, right? So it's a kind of nexus of things that lets us do this right now.
Well, well, this and let's say playing around with LLMs, or does it expand into MLOps and actually LLMOps, a new player in the field, not hit in the field, right? I mean, buzzword, non-classical MLOps, even though MLOps is here for 4 years now.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think, we heard the term LLMOps, and, one of the things that we've really tried to do is we tried to come up with like what our definition of this is in such a way that it is complementary to MLOps that has really kind of been maturing over the last few years. We see it at this conference. It's like people sort of have an agreed upon idea of what MLOps is. We're not sort of replacing the MLOps stack with LLMs. It's sort of when you get into the space of building with LLMs, there are some additional components to that stack, and we really try to dial in and draw the boundary lines between what you need to do when you work with LLMs versus what you're doing when you work with more classical machine learning and sort of, now we can say, more traditional ML ops, right? I don't know if you have anything to add there, but yeah, that's sort of our perspective at a high
maybe go
level.
a little bit deeper, right?
Yeah.
So what are these pieces?
Yeah, I mean, so right now, the way that I like to think about it is we have like the traditional MLOps stack with model serving, model, iteration, all of these pipelines in terms of when are we triggering retrains. These are tools that we have access to that we definitely haven't solved, but it's a very mature ecosystem. There are less mature components of that ecosystem as it relates to LLMOps, such as how are we evaluating these models? How are we ensuring that these models, are giving us the outputs we want? How do we ensure our users are having a good experience with our models? How do we even what are the best metrics that we need to observe and be visible to us in order to ensure that we're able to make decisions about, is our user experience increasing or decreasing? And I think that there's a whole suite of stack on top of kind of core model serving or MLOps or FMOps, right? That you have to take into consideration when you're building applications that are leveraging these tools that kind of exist outside of just making sure the model is served properly. I mean, even just the serving tools we use now in terms of like TGI and VLLM, there's so many levers we can pull right now that just weren't necessary in the MLOps world, but we can build on that mature foundation and add these components and tools to really let us interact with LLMs in a way that makes sense and scales well. And
So you touch upon the evaluation of LLMs, right? So I'm already kind of a week behind in this company, so I can change that. So what is the current best practice of evaluation?
I say in terms of best practice, the best practice is to build a golden data set and test your model on the outputs that you have constructed with humans and have humans evaluate. Honestly, that is the best way to do it. In terms of an automated solution or a non-human eval solution, I think we're looking at tools like Ragus, which is a framework that lets us evaluate the LLMs against other LLMs, leveraging larger language models, so even larger than our large language model, to help us get insights into how our experience is changing and how it's improving. And other than that, user metrics, so simple heuristics like, hey, it was good, no, it was bad, help guide us as well.
So using the large language models to evaluate output from large language models
Yeah.
is kind of the, it's probably one of the most popular ways to actually evaluate tools.
Yeah.
But I've never looked into I never read any white papers on it. Do you have any statistics like, is it the best way to do it, or are there any better ways?
Well,
This is a relative term. It is certainly one of the best automated methods. So Ragus did come out with a paper, and even if we look back at papers like Self-Refine, right? We have this intuition that the models do understand what is a quality versus non-quality output. We can be fairly confident that even though they might favor themselves more than we would like, in terms of the delta or directional changes between iteration 1 and iteration 2, it's really good signal to say that your model is improving. It might not be great to compare models against each other or across different applications, but within a single model, it's very powerful directional signal.
yeah, and I think too, there's always going to be this thing of what is the problem that you're solving and for whom within the company or in your customer base. And you really got to kind of work with that person that's going to be using this tool. And you got to kind of say, this thing that you do that we're trying to automate right now, you do this thing and you sort of produce this text. Here's what the model produced. Is this good? Right? Is this right? Is this correct? And this sort of like actual human feedback is so necessary and so important. But, a lot of people, are just building. They're not necessarily getting in front of customers. They want to improve their systems with some number, some evaluation metric that is calculable, that's easy to find. And this is where you can use leverages, you can leverage RAG assessment type frameworks. You can also come up with your own special metric, but people just want a number at the end of the day that means good, and when it goes up it means better. And so it's really important more than ever to dial in your use case, because good, better, and then on the flip side, what's the worst thing that could happen with this model is the other side of valuation we always want to keep in mind. If it goes wrong, how wrong can it really go? And that's going to kind of give you some intuition as to how careful you need to be with this evaluation piece.
But I guess involving people in evaluating how it works when you're not at scale, right? Because if you need something more generalizable, your company, you can find LLM or more use cases, that's something.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
you employ ever large language models to evaluate your build.
right. And I think this idea of use GPT-4 to do your evaluations, right? Or when GPT-5 comes out, use that. Whatever the most powerful model is, try to use that insofar as you can. You want PII data or personal, whatever issues, to evaluate anything that you build. And this is kind of the emerging best practice. Take the biggest and the bestest, use it to evaluate whatever you're doing, and it will be pretty good at assessing, other LLMs. Is sort of the emerging best practice as far as we can tell.
What about some cutting edge LLM stuff, right?
Yeah.
How does it look like?
Well, the most recent thing that I've heard last week is we're sort of out of camels. We're out of camelids, the alpacas, the vicunas, the llamas, and we're moving on to this sort of the mistrals, the zephyrs. We're moving on to the winds now. And this idea of going from 70 billion to 13 billion to 7 billion, expect to see sort of, now we're going to probably be seeing, can we be performant at 3 billion? Can we be performant then at 1 billion? Can we do smaller models for more focused downstream tasks? This is sort of the big picture. And in terms of specific tooling, I would...
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that comes out every single, almost day at this point. I would say, in terms of the new Mistral is kind of a big deal. Models like the 5 models, which are the textbooks are all you need models, I think are something that we should be paying attention to. They're smaller, they're super performant, and then every time a new quantization method comes out or a new way that we can improve inference, I think is something that you also want to pay attention to. But for right now, I would just say building with Mistral and looking at how they landed at that model is something that everyone should be doing right now.
So what's the latest kind of monetization and still knowledge installation or
So I think right now there's some battles going on between a few different options. So I think something like 4-bit quantization just through bits and bytes is still a kind of standard that you want to see. We see new quantization aware training methods coming out of QAT. But for right now, I would say if you're wanting to stay at the edge, 4-bit quantization for bits and bytes and methods like that are going to be.
also for LLMs?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Not knowledge.
No. I think knowledge distillation is something we can work on, but that's not going to work out of the box for a lot of things. And,
Okay. So maybe any last thoughts about LLMs and what you wanna kind of leave our listeners with, and
Yeah.
they can find you. What
Yeah.
services to provide, etc.
Yeah, I think it's great to talk about building with these tools, and it's great to talk about like all the great things we can do with building RAG systems and putting them into production and optimizing them and evaluating them. But I think some of what gets lost is when you go and you're actually trying to put it into production and you're trying to make sure that it's very performant at the lowest possible scale, it's hyper efficient, it's a really great model for your application, and it's going to make you money. If you're trying to really get there, what ends up happening is people don't have the prerequisite knowledge that they need to go and really dial in a fine-tuning process, a retraining process in some cases for that hyper performance system. And so what we're seeing is, while people will slap up this is a transformer, look at it, everybody knows this, right? Turns out nobody knows it in reality. And the thing is, it really matters the difference between BERT, between BART, between GPT style models, unsupervised pre-training versus supervised fine-tuning versus instruction tuning versus RLHF. These things really matter. And this is the thing that we've heard most from our community. Hey, we can build these great things, but we'd love to know actually more from a first principles perspective about LLMs. That's something I would absolutely recommend everybody to focus on a little bit more, especially as things get more complex. The basics and the first principles are going to become infinitely more
Do
important.
you have any kind of recommendations where we should
Since you asked, I think we've got a great event coming up next week on the transformer from scratch. And we've also got an upcoming course that's completely focused on this called LLM engineering. And that's sort of our new brand for exactly, what this space should look and feel like. That's the LLM engineering space that's going to be complementary to our LLMOps course that's for more advanced users. Yeah.
Chris, any thoughts from inside?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I'd like to just leave on is like, one of the reasons that I'm passionate about what we're doing is I really think that the people who are going to take us to the next level or help us really achieve the highest highs in AI machine learning just aren't quite aware of AI or machine learning yet. So, people who have the ability to be technical with, say, Python, but aren't comfortable yet with AI or ML. I think those are the kinds of people that I love seeing in the courses, who are excited about this new technology and who want to apply their skill and expertise, which might lie outside of AI and ML, to this space. We really need that, and I think that's what makes me excited about this. So that's
Yeah, anybody that has a background in Python and some basic ML, can really take exactly that wherever they are, can kind of get to the state of the art within a month today if they're willing to get after it. So if that's you out there, then definitely start getting after it right now. Please join AI Makerspace and we'll help you get there for sure.